The Prodigal Son returns. The Chris Johnston Show featuring COBOURG's very own Chris Johnston alongside me, Julian McKenzie. We're going to be at the Boston Pizza in COBOURG on 1111 Elgin Street West on January 17th for a live podcast recording of our dear show. I'm very excited about this. Big Money CJ, I know you're very excited about this.
Yeah, where else would we be? Boston Pizza COBOURG is already the place to catch the game. And you might not have heard this yet, Julian, but they are recently renovated. Vibrant, bright, new spot. Perfect place, whether you're having dinner with your family, maybe drinks with your friends, watching the Leafs, watching some NFL games. They got everything. Tons of TVs, great open space. They're even going to have the CJ show, man.
Dude, I can't believe it, man. Be there. You know what? Just be there. I'm not even going to give you the secondary option. Doors are going to open at 5. The podcast show starts at 6. And we're going to do a nice little meet and greet at 7 o'clock right after that. It's an exclusive ticketed event with limited capacity. First come, first serve for tickets and tables. And we will be filling it to capacity. So get your ticket right now. Don't wait. Don't get to January 16th and be like, I'm thinking about going. I don't know if I'm going to go. No, dude, get your tickets now because they will go fast. COBOURG, a wonderful place, home for CJ, home of the COBOURG Cougars. Hopefully we're going to be able to hype those guys up while we're doing our show. But yeah, 5 o'clock, doors will open on January 17th at the Boston Pizza in COBOURG for a live recording of the Chris Johnston Show. We're going to do the show. We're going to have a meet and greet right after that too. It's going to be awesome. Be there. Get your tickets right now.
Homer COBOURG Papa, too.
The Chris Johnston Show.
Let's go!
Your number one destination for a behind-the-scenes look at the game of hockey.
Is this thing on?
Here's NHL insider Chris Johnston and host Julian McKenzie.
CJ, Auston Matthews is still not playing for the Toronto Maple Leafs. This injury that he's been dealing with for a certain amount of games. He spoke to the media about it a couple days ago. He said it might not be something he'll be able to get over this season. I'm really intrigued with this story. That's why we're leading off with it today. What can you say about his injury situation right now?
Well, I actually think it was helpful that Auston was fairly candid in his interview with reporters because, you know, obviously from the outside, I think there's been some, I don't know, confusion or just it's been hard to know what to expect because they've been unable to place, you know, clear timelines and expectations on when, you know, what he has to go through to get back and when he'll be back. You know, I think what you heard from him is, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty just even for himself. And you know, at this point, it's pretty clear this isn't something that you have to put under an MRI or wait to heal. I mean, it's about when Auston feels like he's healthy enough to perform, that his body is doing what it needs to do for him to be on the ice. And, you know, obviously that hasn't been the case. And I think it's been incredibly frustrating for him to, you know, they had the long layoff in November. And I know at that point in time, there was, you know, I'd say a high degree of hope from both Matthews and the Leafs that taking that time then was going to put him in a position to be healthy the rest of the season and to feel good. And, you know, he did come back for a stretch of games, but, you know, it starts to feel a little bit like you're back at square one. I do know that one thing that is encouraging here is that there's a feeling they have a clear handle on what's wrong. You know, it's not as though behind the scenes they're weighing, do we do this form of treatment? Do we do that form of treatment? Surgery? Like none of that stuff's on the table. I think that they at least have a good sense of what the issue is and obviously are going through a pretty aggressive treatment plan to get him back. But that being said, you know, here he's missed, you know, 20-30% of the team's games this season. Not a high degree of confidence when exactly he'll be back. And even if he is back soon, which he did sort of seem to indicate that it could be soon, I just think we're going to be wondering, okay, can he play 5 games in a row? I mean, the Leafs have had this weird schedule with all these back-to-back games. That's not, you know, that's challenging on any player physically, but especially someone dealing with these kind of an injury like this. I think that, you know, there'll still be question even when he plays again. You know, is he himself? Is he going to be able to stay in the lineup for a big stretch of games? I mean, there's just a huge unknown, and this is obviously the Leafs' most important player. They've managed to hang in pretty well without him, 6th in the league as we're recording this. So the fact that they've, you know, got through his injury and injuries to a bunch of other players, quite frankly, in the lineup, I think is a positive. But what's hanging over this is just no one knows for sure Will he get back to his normal self? Will it be for a prolonged period of time? And when will that be?
And as we continue to talk about his injury, we get closer and closer to the Four Nations tournament next month in Boston and Montreal. I decided to pull a producer Drew and go against the grain in our group chat yesterday. And when the discussion of whether or not Auston Matthews should play for Team USA at the Four Nations came up, I decided to take the viewpoint that if he wants to represent Team USA that badly, he should be able to play. I put my phone down, left it for about 5 minutes, and my phone just blew up with a whole bunch of people in the CJ show group chat disagreeing. And you guys are right. Like I understand the point. Like if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs, you probably don't want him in that tournament. But
that group chat is full of Canadians who aren't worried about how Team USA does at Four Nations, and a lot of Leafs fans who are hoping that the Leafs will have a good season. So I mean, there is a little bias in that chat.
Yes, but you guys are also not wrong. Like if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs, if I'm the Toronto Maple Leafs, the playoffs. We've made this one constant theme for this season of the CJ show that we have made mention of repeatedly. This regular season does not matter for the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's all about the postseason. And if you have Auston Matthews, you need him to be healthy. You want him to be ready for those games in April, May, and beyond. Who gives a damn about a tournament in February? I can understand that viewpoint.
Right. And look, this is definitely going to be a major talking point as that tournament draws closer. But the truth is that there's still 6 weeks before any decisions have to be made. It's February 12th is the last day that teams can make an injury replacement. And so, what does this look like? Maybe Auston starts playing again a week from now, and maybe 5 weeks from now, he hasn't had any setbacks. Like, I don't know that there's a discussion. I think where the discussion comes in is if he misses a good chunk of this 6 weeks and he only can play, a few games before then. Like, I think what happens really between now and February 12th is what's most important. It's a little less about what's already happened. But you can be sure the Leafs in the back of their minds are not too concerned about what happens at the Four Nations face-off. I don't think just for Team USA. I would say for any of the four, if there was a William Nylander situation, they wouldn't be too worried about Sweden's hopes. They'd be worried most about William Nylander, the individual and the player for them. And so, I don't know how this will go. I think ultimately, look, it's an NHL event. I don't think any team could stand in the way of their player going. In this case, I think it will really be up to Auston Matthews. Obviously, he'll be consulting with the team doctors and management, and everyone will have an opinion. But I think it'll be his call when we get closer to that point. But yeah, I think selfishly, it's not crazy to imagine the Leafs might prefer he take that 10 days to rest up again and maybe get further treatment and focus on what can be done best. And it's a tough spot for a player to be in. I mean, this is going back a bit, but Steve Yzerman and Mario Lemieux, to name two, are players that played in the Olympics for Canada, and then their seasons were basically done right after. Now, they were at different stages of their careers. They'd already won Stanley Cups, and they'd yet to win an Olympic gold medal. And so it was a pretty unique opportunity in front of them. Whereas, Austin's still earlier on in his career. There's going to be many more Team USA events for him. I think some of the math on that's a little different. I certainly am not suggesting in any way, shape, or form he's going to put his own interests ahead of the Leafs. I think, it's pretty clear the attitude among this team at this point for the players that have been there is, they know they have to have playoff success. Like literally nothing else matters, right? I mean, individual awards. Mitch Marner's right now on pace for his first 100-point season. Like that'll be nice. That'll be a nice, feather in his hat if he gets there. But, Mitch would understand, as Auston has with some of the individual seasons he's had, William Nylander, that it really all comes down to what they can get done in the springtime. And so, it's definitely one to watch. And there's going to be other players in other situations. It's just, Auston Matthews is a star in Toronto. He, was expected to star for Team USA. And that has to be in some amount of question at this point. But as I say, it still is a little bit early, because if he comes back and plays and is healthy, I'm realizing right now it doesn't feel that way, but I mean, there's still time for that to happen. I mean, I don't think there's a debate. If he let's say he plays a month leading into that tournament and he's playing great and there's no indication he's being held back at all physically. I mean, I don't think there's a huge case there that he should sit out the Four Nations face-off. I think it's more if he's in and out of the lineup, or if he can't really play at the normal level he's accustomed to, I mean, you know, maybe that decision gets a little easier even for him. Maybe if he's still not feeling good in February, you know, he's going to look at it and say like, oh man, I mean, this just doesn't make sense. So we're going to hear a lot about this. This is definitely going to be a hot button issue. This will be on all the intermission panels if you're watching Leafs coverage. But I do think everyone has to remember, we just don't have enough information right now to say exactly how it's going to go.
First show of 2025, and we're already ahead of the curve on what people are going to be talking about when it comes to Auston Matthews, especially if he doesn't play for a prolonged period.
Well, I start to hear it a little like it's like in my friends, you know, like it starts to build up. And again, it's kind of funny just because he's an American playing in a Canadian market. I mean, it would be a different conversation. I mean, this is like, imagine in Edmonton, if it was Connor McDavid, it would be a little different triangulation because presumably a lot of Edmonton Oilers fans are also Canadians who are hoping Team Canada does well. And so there might be a little bit more there, but you know, obviously, if you're a fan of the Leafs who's holds a Canadian passport, you probably are not too concerned about what happens for Team USA between February 12th and 20th.
You mentioned earlier that the Leafs might have a bit of a better handle over, you know, what really could be ailing Auston and treatment. Like we've talked about the fact that there's an injury that we haven't really gone in on, like specifically like what it is. Like how much do we know about what is actually troubling him? Because we haven't really discussed that.
Well, we don't know anything. I mean, they haven't said specifically what it is. There's a lot of speculation it's back related, and I got no reason to believe that isn't the case. But even when you say it's back related, there's a whole bunch of things it could be. You know, as I say, it has been said to me many times, like surgery isn't on the table here. Like we're not talking, because again, sometimes some back related surgical type procedures are very, very serious and invasive. And so I don't think it's anything like that. I get the sense it's more about his ability to move and, you know, kind of the mechanics of how his body, you know, performs on the ice. And it just hasn't been there yet. I mean, you know, Auston, to be fair, has said that he's feeling better out there. And I don't think he's making that up because he's in the same breath, he's turning around and saying, but I can't say for sure, you know, what's to come. I mean, this is, unfortunately for him, this is a new type of injury. It's one that he's been dealing with in some way, shape or form since training camp. And so if you had gone back to September and had an honest, I'm sure when he was talking to the Leafs medical staff or the people close to him, he probably didn't imagine it would still be hampering him into January. And that's where, you know, I'm sure this has been a real challenge. I mean, this is his first season wearing the C for the Leafs. You know, he's obviously coming off a 69 goal season last year. He's a huge part of the team, but they, you know, the flip side of this is they've found a way to get the job done. They haven't always won pretty, but they've been winning a lot of games. They're playing now with Anthony Stolarz, who effectively had become their number one goaltender, but, you know, before he had his knee injury. You know, they're missing all these bodies with sickness. At least they've been dealing with the flu lately. So anyway, somehow they're getting through it, I guess is the point. And so if you're trying to take an optimistic tone to start a new year, Julian, and you're in the Leafs front office, you're thinking, we're going to add Auston Matthews back at some point. Like I get the feeling everyone is being extra patient close to this injury. I'm not talking about the fans or the media or anything like that, but I think that there's a real understanding that whether he plays, you know, the Leafs have back-to-back Saturday and Sunday against Boston and Philadelphia. Like those games, as much as you want to win them and perform well, Boston's a division rival, blah, 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 blah. Like there's no thought about rushing him back into a January 4th game if he's not feeling good. I think that everyone involved directly with the decision-making of when he plays and what his situation is, you know, are really taking a long-term view here, but we don't know where it's going to go. And it won't be the last time we talk about it on the pod, unfortunately, just because I still think even when he gets back in the lineup, he's going to have to play for a number of weeks before anyone is totally comfortable that this is something that's in the past.
For sure. Last thing, you do bring up a really good point. If you're the Toronto Maple Leafs right now, we're recording January 2nd. You are at the top of the Atlantic Division. You're level on points with the Florida Panthers, and you haven't had a whole healthy Auston Matthews for most of this year. I get we've said what we've said about the regular season. That's pretty damn good for this team, considering the options they have, considering the changes they made with their coach entering this season. For them to be where they're at, like, I like this for the Leafs. I think this is as optimistic as you can to start. Obviously, you have to make it work where it really matters. But to be where they're at, considering that injury with Auston Matthews, I like that for them. That's really significant. There would be a lot more noise if the Leafs were further down the standings and Auston Matthews was hurt.
Well, the Leafs haven't really dealt with something like this. I mean, when you look at their main players in the regular season, they've been very healthy. I mean, Mitch Marner had, I think it was a broken collarbone or something. He missed a stretch of games a few seasons ago, the year that Sheldon Keefe replaced Mike Babcock. So I'm going back 5 seasons now. But for the most part, these guys have been healthy. I mean, even Auston Matthews has missed stretch of games in the past, but he'll miss 4 games and then play the rest of the year. Like, so it's not as though he has a bunch of 82s on his hockey DB page under games played, but they have been pretty healthy at the top of the roster. And, you know, obviously every single team out there deals with injuries through a season. So I'm not saying they haven't faced any challenges, but they haven't faced a season like this with the core. And, you know, I think you try to find, if you're around a team, you're trying to find positives or hope in anything. And the fact they have weathered the storm. I mean, they missed Jake McCabe for a time. You know, Tanev's missed games. I mean, they really have had more of a revolving door. Now, part of that too is their roster's getting older. I mean, part of it is they signed some players that are in their 30s, and players in their 30s are just more likely to miss time than players, you know, in the early 20s, just the way it goes. But yeah, they've found a way. They're playing a different style. I think it's very clear. I mean, this team is going to trade for a middle six center. I would put, we're not a betting podcast, but I would put a lot of stock in the idea that's where their biggest addition is going to come between now and March 7th at the trade deadline, because that's still a need. But even needing another center and being without their top center, they've won a bunch of games, and, you know, we're going on and on and on here about the Leafs, but, you know, John Tavares probably hasn't got even quite enough recognition, or whatever you want to call it, kudos, flowers, for how well he's performed, because he's essentially been the Leafs top line center for a bunch of this season, more than he or the team would have wanted or expected. And he's been very productive, you know, even at age 34. And, you know, he's helped keep them afloat too. Obviously, Mitch Marner's having a big season, as I mentioned. William Nylander's scoring a lot of goals. I mean, it's a team effort, but, you know, the other top players have carried the load here, and that's been a positive.
Is there a middle six center out there that makes sense for this team? I mean, way to narrow it down, but like you mentioned, that's not the first time you've mentioned that you wouldn't be surprised if you saw the Leafs make a move in that area. But is there like a guy that makes sense?
I don't have a name yet, you know, and it's not because I'm skirting the question. I just think,
no, I get you.
We have to wait to see exactly which teams become sellers. I mean, you know, obviously we're doing trade boards. We're already projecting, you know, guys like Yanni Gourde, you know, likely to be moved, I would say, by the Seattle Kraken, but not for sure. I mean, if, and it's a monster if, but if the Islanders were to move on from Brock Nelson, another pending UFA, you know, I think he would make a lot of sense for the Leafs. Frankly, I think he'd make a ton of sense for Minnesota, Dallas, Vegas, you know, a lot of the teams that are trying to gear up for a long playoff run, just because of the versatility he brings, the way he plays. But, you know, there's a feeling that the Islanders, even with him being a UFA to be, and even with them being out of the playoff, you know, they're not really in the thick of the playoff mix right now, that they still might not necessarily trade him. I mean, there's a bunch of guys, but it's probably more than likely going to be a rental player. There's a world, maybe it's a guy with some term, but, you know, the Leafs really like Fraser Minton. And I think certainly by next season, they see him being one of their centers. You know, they're going to keep Matthews. I think they're ultimately going to keep John Tavares, so that they might not necessarily want to bring a player in with term beyond this season. But again, it all comes down to cost and what's available. I mean, this is the cool part of getting to this part of the season, is now I think a lot of the front offices and teams really narrow in on figuring out exactly what's available, and then you try to make the best choice you can make out of the pool of players. But it's going to be costly, right? Like Adam Henrique cost Edmonton a first-round pick last year, and he's kind of that similar guy. I mean, to bring in an impactful, semi-impactful player in the middle of the ice is going to cost them something. I could see also the Leafs going for another depth defenseman just to round out the group. I mean, the saga of Yanni Hakanpää continues. He's, you know, still hasn't played a lot of games, and so I just don't know what you can expect from him, if anything at all, at this point, when it really matters. And so, yeah, it's going to be an active few weeks here for the Leafs, and you know, they're as you know, internally they're just hoping that everything aligns, that they make that trade, that Auston Matthews comes back healthy, Anthony Stolarz rejoins the lineup, and then, they finished the season strong and are ready for a long playoff run.
All right, that does it for our first Leafs Corner of 2025. We led the show with Leafs Corner. Good start. Let's get
Someone
to
recently critiqued me and said we hadn't talked enough Leafs on the pod. So,
oh, really?
Yes.
Who said that?
I don't remember, but it was one of my buddies.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll rectify that. We'll definitely rectify that. I'm surprised it wasn't like Sid Sixera or something like that. He's a big fan of Leafs Corner. Anyway, Rangers Corner. We didn't expect to have that be so prominent throughout this year, but man, this year has been so wild. I had them as the team coming out of the Eastern Conference. They're in the basement now, essentially in the Eastern Conference now. And if you didn't think it could get any worse, Igor Shesterkin is on injured reserve. What do we know about that injury, and how much worse can it really get for the New York Rangers?
Well, we don't know a lot about the injury. He took it was part of a collision with Sam Bennett in a game. Lindgren and Bennett were kind of tied up, and Bennett smashes into him. He gets placed on IR for now, which I guess is encouraging short term, that it's, IR is only a week-long stint where you have to be off the roster. It gives the team the flexibility to call up other players or another player. But I don't know the extent of what the situation is. But, I mean, I've almost run out of words on the Rangers, quite honestly. I mean, what have they won? Like 4 of 18 or 19 games back to November. It just feels as though it's a season where I can't imagine them getting it back on the rails. And I'll be the first to put up my hand and say I'm wrong if I'm wrong. I mean, I was writing off the Pittsburgh Penguins pretty early in this season, and they're, lo and behold, they've hung around the playoff race. So, I might end up being wrong about them. But with the Rangers, it's just hard to see the set of circumstances. Like, it's not like they're one move away from everything clicking again. It's not like they're a coaching change away from everything just being perfect. I mean, it feels deeper. And so, losing Shesterkin, who obviously is their MVP, their best player, it's tough. You only hope for them that it's a shorter term injury and they find a way through it. But there's just a lot of unrest on Broadway there, and maybe they can flip a switch. Maybe this holiday, like a little holiday break. I don't know. It doesn't feel like that to me. Just kind of feels like this lost season. But it's been pretty dramatic. It's sort of like as the Big Apple turns, a little bit of a soap opera vibe around that Rangers team.
James Dolan, man, just it's soap operas around that man. I mean, look, if you follow the New York Knicks, you have seen those soap operas take place as long as they have with that organization. It's not to say the Rangers can't have them, but like this feels very New York Knicks-esque for me, watching this team get undone by a memo. Like, think about it. Like that trade memo that came out how many weeks ago for Chris Drury? Everything since then has led to them being 1 point above the Buffalo Sabres in the Eastern Conference. They are 1 point up on the Buffalo Sabres in that conference. I'm going to repeat that again. 1 point. This is a team that was supposed to be in the Stanley Cup final this year, coming out of the Eastern Conference.
Well, and they could have been last year. They were 2 games short of the final, right?
They're going to miss this year, man. Like, just like this is a good team.
The other part here is, I don't know if you looked at their January schedule, but it's brutal. Like, they are actually just entering one of those times where they're just playing top team road games. Like they don't have the right collection of teams to find themselves in, put it that way, coming up here. And so that adds into it, because they're probably, I don't know, the season isn't lost yet. It's so precariously close to it. And as I say, I just don't see what sparks the turnaround at this point. I mean, if anything, they've traded players out off the roster. Like they haven't gotten better with the moves they've made. Now, those moves weren't all meant to get better tomorrow, like in the moment. But I'm sorry. Like I'm rarely lost for words on this pod. I'm a little lost for words when it comes to the Rangers, if I'm being honest. I don't know what to make of it. And I don't know where they go next, which is kind of, I think, what you want to, like, that's sort of the essence of the discussion, right? Is like, what could they do to right the ship? I mean, they might need to just blow up the ship and build a new one.
I mean, if they continue on the course that they're on, maybe James Higgins looks really good in a blue shirt. I don't know. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's just getting a top 3 pick in the draft that helps. I don't know.
I don't know if they can fall that far, can they?
I mean, it's a good question. I don't know if they're that for. You're right. Like, I don't think it gets that low, but
No, they might get lucky. If you finish 6th last in the league, you could still, I think, move up to the number 1 pick, right? So
7 points from the drop. Chicago dead last at 26 points. 7 points. 7 points off. You need to go through a terrible January.
Enough about Chicago.
How much do you want to go about Chicago?
I don't have anything electrifying to say. Just, they get the Winter Classic treatment there. It's kind of a big marquee, and it just puts the spotlight on how difficult the season has been. Like this was supposed to be a step forward. There's no way around it. I mean, they went and spent big in free agency, made off-season additions, talked about better insulating the Bedards and some of the other younger players, and they're really no better off through almost half a season now than where they were last year. And it's just a reminder. They're everywhere, but like the rebuilds can be tough, even when you get great players. Like I'm certainly not hanging this on Connor Bedard's shoulders, but it's dangerous. They just feel like they're a long way away from being a long way away still, is what I'm going to say. I mean, it's not that they don't have really exciting prospects coming, but something feels off there. I mean, you saw the comments after the Winter Classic. I don't have them in front of me, but like the players, it just seems like they're really down. Obviously, they fired a coach here in the last few weeks. They're another organization looking for answers, and I don't think there are any obvious ones in front of them.
Okay, I want you to be real with me, as you always are, but be real with me. Did you watch the Winter? You probably did, but did you watch the Winter Classic on New Year's Eve?
Yeah, I flipped to it. It wasn't much of a game after the second period, so I didn't watch it uninterrupted, but there's a few sports on that day, but I did catch good chunks of it.
What did you think of it being placed on New Year's Eve? What, like 5:00 Eastern? Like, what did you think of that placement? We normally see it like on New Year's Day. We normally see it like even like maybe a little after, but like just I thought it was just funny to see it placed where it was.
I didn't mind it as much as a lot of other people seem to. I will say this. I think the concept, it needs new life breathed into it. I actually covered the first Winter Classic at Wrigley Field. I want to say that was 2009 New Year's, so a long time ago, 15, 16 years ago. But I remember how exciting it was. I mean, it was just cool back then to see a hockey rink in an iconic baseball stadium. Obviously, now anyone who's paid attention or wants to pay has seen that time and time again. What's happening now is you're seeing a real shift in, what sports play on which days, right? I mean, the NHL for a period kind of owned New Year's Day when they first developed that Winter Classic. That was part of the sales pitch, right? They were on NBC at the time in the US, and they actually got a pretty primetime window, and they were delivering strong audiences. So the concept was great. But now, there's so many bowl games. I don't watch US college football, so you might be better attuned to speak to this. But I remember like when the NBA owned Christmas Day, and then all of a sudden, there I am watching on Netflix a couple NFL games on Christmas this year, which was great. I actually enjoyed it because I watch more NFL than NBA. But, I'm just saying that it's a shifting media landscape. It's a shifting. I still think that there's something there. I like that the NHL does have this history, but I think they need to either put it in totally different venues, find a different time slot, just find a way to evolve it. I don't think they have to start from scratch, but I will say it was lost on the calendar too. There was 12 NHL games that day, I want to say, a bunch of afternoon games, before it in other venues. And I saw a lot of people saying like, oh, wow, I didn't even know the Winter Classic was today. So I still like it though, as a concept. I trust me, I've been to a bunch of those outdoor games. It's always fun on the ground. I think it's a great fan experience. It's kind of cool when it's around New Year's. There's just something different in the air around New Year's, right? I'm not talking about just partying. I just mean it kind of feels fresh, and it's just I don't know. You let some of the weight of whatever might have been on your shoulders go. Yeah. So that's a long way of saying I want to see them try more different things, but they're also under pressure. I mean, there's a reason Chicago's played in 102 outdoor games, right? Mm-hmm. It's a major U.S. media market, and they're under pressure from their media partners in the States to keep doing that. But I'd love to see them just do something crazy. Build it in Central Park, whatever. Just do something totally different. Find the right time slot. Be open to doing it on like Christmas Day if they think that might work, or just something. You know, I know that we have the whole CBA. You know, there's no league activities 24, 25, and 26, but just so happens we got a CBA negotiation coming up. Maybe there's something that might make sense that they could put in front of the players, the league that is, to waive that or to have some exceptions to that. I mean, I just think the NHL has to get back to the drawing board and not just do the same old, because it's starting to feel a little old.
I don't have a problem with the NHL putting the Winter Classic on New Year's Eve. I actually think it's a pretty unique idea, but at least make it be the thing. I don't like it being in the middle of all these other games that are playing on New Year's Eve. I think if that's going to be your thing, if that's the Winter Classic, that's what you want people to tap into, don't have other games on that's going to divert everyone else's attention. That I think that's step one. Step two, I understand.
But here's the problem with that. Is there's two
okay.
conversations, right? You're talking about getting national attention on one game.
Yes.
But the problem is a lot of teams love playing on New Year's Eve because it's a good time for their own fans to be at a game, right? There was a whack of New Year's Eve afternoon games around the league. And I'm guessing it's because individual teams are like, this is great for our market. You know, everyone's kind of off work. Like this is, so like, I'm with you. Because January 1st, was there one Devils Kings game, right?
There was a random Devils Kings game in the middle of the day.
Like, I guess I just don't know the power of college football. I guess maybe if that was the Winter Classic, one game, like, would anyone watch it? I don't know. I would have watched it because I'm not watching college football, but I'm not the target audience here.
Well, not only was it college football's day on New Year's Day, this is the first year they're doing that 12-team playoff. So, like you had like Texas play. I caught the end of that game. Texas and Arizona State played a barn burner of a game that went to overtime. Amazing game. I think the Sugar Bowl was supposed to go down, but unfortunately, an unfortunate tragedy went down in New Orleans, which delayed that game. And I think it's moved either to today or Friday. Oregon at the Rose Bowl was yesterday. Oregon getting dummied by Ohio State. Like there's some, not only are you getting those bowl games, you're getting like big name quality schools playing in those games. And again, you kind of mentioned you're not that familiar with the power of college athletics in the States.
Well, I know it's big. I just don't know, big, but like, I don't follow myself.
It doesn't matter if, like, I'm a Syracuse guy and my schools are not in that school. I will watch those games. It doesn't matter if you don't have a dog in that race. Like, there's no Michigan, there's no Alabama in those games. I'm sure when the ratings come out, people will say, hey, like, we watched all those games, because college athletics, in particular with football, people watch those games. And I think I can understand the logic to some degree where the NHL might not want to feel lost in the shuffle going up against those games, in particular since they're going to be on ESPN. But I don't know. I think if you're the NHL, you need to find a way to make sure that Winter Classic, when that game is on, like, that is your day. If it's the 30th, if it's the 31st, if it's the 1st, it's the 2nd, make that your day.
They have played on the 2nd in the past.
Sure. Just make that your day. Like, make that be the day where that's the one game you want people to tap into. Also, yes, Chicago's a big media market. If they're going to look like this for the next little while, even if they have Connor Bedard, I'm cool with somebody else taking that spot. I'm cool with Pittsburgh getting more time. The New York Rangers have played outdoor games before. Put them back in that spot. Put somebody else in there. I'm cool with Chicago playing. Let's cool off that idea for a little bit, especially if they're not going to be good for the foreseeable future. Look, Connor Bedard's a talent. We all know that. I don't need to see them in that game every 2 years.
The problem is it's still such a regional sport. Like, the teams do drive a certain audience. You know what I mean?
Yep, they do. They do.
I mean, last year they did Seattle and Vegas in the Winter Classic.
That was fun.
It was a good game too. But I don't know what the ratings looked like. I don't know if I'm assuming the ratings weren't amazing, but I don't actually know that. So this is the problem when we get just talking about stuff. It's like, I have not done the research here.
But that's okay though. Like, even if we don't have all the notes in front of us, like, this is genuine discussion. And like, I'm pretty sure this has come up almost every year we've done this show. Like, the Winter Classic needs to be tweaked. It needs to be changed. It needs to be different. Like, the fact that it was kind of out of sight, out of mind this year, like, that doesn't help them. I know Chance the Rapper performed 5 years too late.
Like, like, that's not stuff you want as talking points that come out of that game. Like, you want people to watch that game and have fun and recognize the novelty of it. But it's worn off.
It wasn't quite the same as having, was it Beyonce and Post Malone on Christmas Day?
Yeah, on Netflix. Like, you weren't, like, you're not going to get those.
That was actually pretty sick. That halftime show.
Oh man, yeah. It was.
Like, that rivals like a Super Bowl halftime show just for, I mean, I know the Christmas days, but like for a random game during the season, like pretty crazy.
What did you think of LeBron saying, hey, NBA, this is our day. You know, I love the NFL, but the NBA, this is our day. What did you think of him saying that?
Well, he's right. It's just things change. And am I wrong on this again? See, like, I don't know enough. I've never lived in the US. I've obviously traveled a ton down there over years, but the NFL is still king, right? Like, the NFL can kind of do what it wants. Like, they don't need to worry about anyone else's feelings, right?
Yeah. Like, the fact that they're up on, like, they're saying, like, the amount of people who stream those Netflix games, even if it wasn't like the best quality games, like, they still commanded like millions on millions. Like, some of the most streamed games of all time. I remember seeing that somewhere. Like, they could really do what they want, essentially. Well, yes, the NBA games this year were better than the NFL games in terms of quality. The NBA is
having a bit of an existential crisis right now.
Yes, they are. They absolutely are. People are questioning the ratings. Maybe the NBA Cup isn't as good of an idea as people thought. Like
with the players, it's interesting because the players are openly talking about it, right? I mean, I just think it's funny because, you know, we're talking about this with hockey, but like, you don't get the sense it's the same level of concern. But obviously the NBA is an even bigger league, and they're like, man, are we doing it wrong? You know, Charles Barkley came out and said they should start the season on Christmas Day and play into the summer recently. I mean, like, it just seems like in the NBA, they're like, we got to change something drastically. And in hockey, there's like a debate about starting the season 2 weeks earlier, and adding more games and stuff. But it's not really what I would call a drastic change. I mean, it would have an effect on things. But anyway, just noting that in the NBA, like, to even have LeBron, all these, you know, Kevin Durant
talked about the All-Star game.
On the All-Star game, like, it just feels like their players are openly like, uh-oh, what's going on with our league? Are we in trouble here?
I forget which podcast. It might have been the Jenkins and Jones podcast. They were talking about the NBA All-Star game, and I'm going to throw this out to you because maybe that's something the NHL could always do, where in the NBA, they've been trying to find ways to improve the NBA All-Star game. And if you're making it so like these guys,
I got a good way, just don't have it.
Sure. But like, at the end of the day, like, if you're trying to make like these massive cash payouts be like an incentive to get players to play, like, these guys make millions of dollars. What's them making another million or another $250,000 going to do? But if you found a way to make it so that guys on the other team lost money, like, does that bring in more incentive for them to do it? But also, I'm sure that would be something that would very much go against their CBA.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the union would be like, that's not happening.
No, we're not making our guys lose any money off of a glorified exhibition game. But it'd be funny, though. Like, that's how
you're talking about incentives.
People.
Like, what could the incentives be, or a disincentive in a sense? I just don't think players are ever going to care that much, honestly. And it doesn't mean it's bad, though. Like, I've kind of made this argument about the NHL All-Star Game. Like, it's like, if you just approach it for what it is, it's lighthearted entertainment. It's definitely not memorable, you'd call it, or, you know, but like, it's not, it just kind of is what it is. I'm actually excited, honestly, for the Four Nations face-off. Like, I think that this is a good way to use, and look, I'll be the first to say, like, obviously it doesn't have historical significance. It might not even be memorable itself. When I say, like, we'll have to see what happens if anything, you know, sort of stands the test of time that happens there. But I think that's a good way to use an in-season break. I think the All-Star Game format in every sport in North America is played. Like, I don't really watch any of them unless I'm paid to be, you know, I've been to the NHL All-Star Game a bunch for work, but I'm not even watching Major League Baseball All-Star Game anymore. I will watch the Home Run Derby if I'm around. I still kind of enjoy that, even though that, I know there's a lot of debate about that it's not what it once was. But I'm not watching the NBA All-Star Game. I'm not watching the Pro Bowl. Like,
the Pro Bowl's the worst of all of the.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, I guess my point is like, this isn't any sports issue. Do you know what it is? It's that athletes are not good at going at 25%. Like, we're talking about the best in the world. That the reason we love watching them play their normal games or their normal playoffs is because of the intensity and on the stakes and the way they put themselves out there. And it's just hard to like if you take away the fact that they don't care about what they're playing for fully, then then
why do we still have them?
I think it's a money thing. I can speak more to the NHL. Like all the NHL's partners come to that event. It's a big business event for the league. It's a big social event for the league. Like there's parties every day of the All-Star weekend. There's live music. Like there's business being done there, but I just don't know. Yeah. I mean, look at the NBA, the NHL is actually supposed to have an All-Star game next season before the Olympics, which is unusual. If you go back to the previous years when there was an Olympics, there was no All-Star game, but I think it's supposed to go to the Islanders next year, right? So,
I didn't even realize. Really?
Yeah, I think it goes All-Star game and at the Islanders, and then right to the Milan Olympics.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, I like
that might actually get hyped though, because a lot of players in the All-Star game naturally are going to be going to the Olympics.
Yeah.
And so it's like a chance to kind of like get the players' thoughts right before this tournament. Like it actually might work in this instance as a media event, but
I also like the format in Toronto. Like I liked what they at least tried to do with the way like the events were being played and some of the games that went on that day for the All-Star game. I didn't mind the format. I thought it was really cool, but maybe I have the benefit of being there in person and enjoying it. So I don't know.
Connor McDavid won $1 million in the skills competition.
Yeah, he killed it. That was his whole thing. I liked it. I had fun. I don't know, man. It's we could argue, but would not argue. We could discuss what could be done about the AHL All-Star game until we're blue in the face.
Yeah.
Anyway,
what can be done about Team Canada at the World Juniors, bud?
I'm very glad you went there. That was the very
because that's the other pressing question, isn't it?
Well, that's another reason why I was asking you what you were doing on New Year's, because Canada and the United States played on New Year's as well. I know later in the evening, but
I watched it. I didn't have any big New Year's plans. I was watching the game.
I was in the building for it. That was, man, they got beat. But I also am not surprised. Like they left so much talent at home. Like this team can't score. There are 3 teams. We're recording this in the morning of Thursday. The quarterfinals will be later. Probably by the time you listen to this episode, those games will already be going on. Canada entered quarterfinal play with like maybe 3 teams scoring fewer goals than them, and like 2 of them are in the relegation game. Like what? That's not what I'm expected to see from a Team Canada squad such as this. Like no.
Yeah, and look at it's a tournament. A lot of Canadians in particular, but I think even around the world, it's taken more prominence. I know in Sweden, it gets, draws pretty good TV audiences. Like this tournament has grown to where a lot of people care about it, but I mean, we should still keep some level of perspective about what it is and what it isn't. And, it's also a very short-term event in terms of like bringing a team together. And to me, what stood out most in watching the Canadian games leading into the quarterfinal is, yes, there's talented players they left at home, but like they just have had no solution for the group of players they selected. Like it just feels like they have no rhythm, no chemistry. For some reason, they're not practicing ever. Like it's been a bit perplexing from afar just to watch it play out. And what's crazy about the way the event works is that maybe you're listening to this and Canada's beaten Czechia in the quarterfinals like 5-1 and everything is clicked and they could go and win a couple more games and still win a gold medal. I mean, that's the nature of what, short-term tournament hockey is. I mean, we've seen lots of Canadian teams lose games that don't matter because they won gold at the end. That happened in Salt Lake City in 2002 with the men's team, in 2010 again with the men's team in Vancouver, tied a game and lost a game early in the tournament, but, found a way to beat the US when it mattered the most in the gold medal game. And so, I guess the what is that? History is written by the winners. There's still a chance for this to be viewed differently, but right now, I mean, with it being a home World Junior tournament and a lot of hype about it, it just feels like they have no answers. And in the way Dave Cameron, the head coach, has sort of publicly framed things, it's left me scratching my head a bit. It's like, he's almost saying like, it's not my fault they're undisciplined. And like, I get that to a degree is true. Like the players make individual decisions on the ice, but the goal is to build a team culture that this is how we do it. And this is how we approach things and to make adjustments in game. Like if obviously the penalties got stacked up on that New Year's Eve game against the U.S., but like they continued into the third period. It was 2-1. It was still, the game was still there for them. And Canada, it felt like Canada beat itself. And I don't mean that as any shot at the U.S. I mean, obviously the U.S. is the gold medal favorites in this tournament, and there's no shame in losing to the U.S., but it really felt like the Canadian team didn't meet the moment in any way, shape, or form. And so, yeah, I don't have any like deep thoughts here, but this is a story. If they go out in the quarterfinals again, I mean, that's pretty shocking. That would be back-to-back years. It certainly has not happened a lot in history for the Canadian team. And, I wonder what'll come out of that if everyone is just like, okay, we're doing things fine, or if there's going to be some soul searching. Because actually, give Canada credit. They actually got great goaltending in this tournament too. And that's, that's been another sort of talking point around all Canadian teams broadly is Canada isn't developing goaltenders anymore. Well, that hasn't been their issue at all in this event.
I'll say this. If Canada finds a way to win gold, if by the time we come back on Monday and we're talking about Canada winning gold at the World Juniors, it'll probably be because of their goaltending and because of the way that they just defended through. Because you have Czechia today. There is a path where you're from this point on. If you beat Czechia,
Sweden in the semifinals,
and then the States in the final. Unless those teams fall off, it's going to be a very tough road from here on out. And even Dave Cameron himself said, no easy games from here on out. But I haven't seen enough from this team offensively to suggest that that's going to lead them to glory over these teams. Like I could see if Canada wins it, you're seeing 2-1 games, 1-0, 3-2, a defensive tight. That might be the way forward for this team.
For sure. I mean, they haven't allowed an even strength goal. So, I mean, against that should be a good, that should be the stat we're talking about. That should be the lead off. And here we are after 4 games and everything's on fire because they're allowing 3 power play goals against tonight. I mean, how can you win when you play that way? Even the game against Latvia where, it's a shootout loss, but there's 2 power play goals in the third period for the Latvians to tie that one up. So, that's why it feels a little self-inflicted to me. I must say it makes it pretty must-see TV for me, just to see, because obviously some of the criticism and discussion about the players and we are talking about teenagers, goes too far. But obviously this group is under a huge amount of heat going into a game like this. I'm very curious to see what version of them shows up. As I say, I'm still scratching my head that they didn't skate from the game against the US until the game against Czechia. I mean, I understand conserving energy in a season. We see that with lots of NHL teams, but usually you don't pass up an off day skate and then the morning skate the next day. I mean, usually you at least get out for 15 minutes. I realize maybe this is old school thinking, but it's just to sort of give the players something to do, shake out the legs a little, just have a few laughs, shoot the puck, feel the puck on your stick. I mean, I love this tournament, I must say. Yeah. No matter what happens with any of the team, I find it's highly entertaining. It's highly unpredictable. And yeah, but this is when you're hosting it as Team Canada's and when you have the expectations they do. I mean, they have not draped themselves in glory. It's not just because they haven't won or that they've lost 2 games. It's really kind of the manner they've played right from the beginning. It just hasn't felt right.
Last question about Hockey Canada here. When you saw Canada lose to Latvia, what was your initial reaction?
It was pretty cool. I'm not cheering, even as a Canadian, I'm not really cheering. I want to see the players do well. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not maybe your average person watching that game. I can just appreciate the sport. And, I know how much hockey matters in Latvia. I've actually been to Latvia for a World Hockey Championship. It's a classic underdog story. I mean, the Latvians were heavily outshot on the night. They found a way to get those 2 power play goals, but you still got to get through overtime. Was it 8 or 9 shooters in the shootout? None of the Canadians. 8. Seriously. Yeah, none of the Canadians scored. The Latvians had to duck some odds there to win that game, and so I could appreciate what that meant for them. And to be honest, in that moment, I'm still thinking it's a round robin format. Canada still gets a point for that loss. I was thinking, I didn't think it was some death blow for Canada either. I just thought it's cool when you see countries that are fighting and scrapping and maybe disrespected a little bit. that was the one thing. I don't know if you saw the video. The IIHF put out a video where the Latvian coach addressed his players after the game, and he was saying, like, the Canadian journalists didn't even know where you guys played. They don't know who you are. Like, I think that there is an element of truth to that, quite frankly. And I mean, I think that's good for the sport, is if you have other nations come up, and obviously we want to see top level players produce from all over the world. I think it raises the level for everyone in hockey. So I kind of liked it, but that's not to say I was cheering for Latvia or against Canada or anything like that. I just, in that moment, who can't appreciate an underdog story? I mean, that's a tale as old as time if you're watching sports.
So there's no Latvian flag in your office? There's none in your bedroom? Hugging above your bed?
I did go to the Latvian president's house when I was in Latvia, though. So
have you told that story?
I'm sure I've
before?
told that story, but yeah,
that's crazy. You've just been around all this royalty in your life in Europe.
I just surrendered my passport.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I guess it's a security thing, and this was way back in 2006. Who knows? Now I'm guessing the UK, they're not letting some random Canadian journalist go into the house of. But anyway,
yeah, that's why you have that soft spot for Latvia.
The Latvian people, though, they love hockey. They're passionate, and you saw the players. I mean, again, that's part of what makes the tournament special. I mean, I'm so excited for today. Once we're done recording here, it's 4 quarterfinal games in a row. And I will watch a good chunk of most of them as much as I can while handling my other life responsibilities. But just because you're going to see some amazing hockey.
For sure. I've been excited being around it and watching games at TD Place and at the CTC. This is my first time covering the World Juniors, so it's been really fun doing that for the Athletic. After we're done recording, I'm going to go race off to the rink as well. Which again, by the time you get this, we'll all be watching the World Juniors. But you know how it is. We didn't get to this obviously because of the shows we had the last few days. But what did you think of the Detroit Red Wings and Derek Lalonde being fired in favor of Todd McLellan?
Well, I think it was only a matter of time, unfortunately. I mean, you have a coach in the final year of his deal, as Lalonde was, and the Red Wings just didn't get any traction this season, and they're under a growing amount of pressure. I mean, Steve Yzerman gave an interview explaining that decision, and you probably saw the clip bounce around, but he's like, if you have any better ideas for this rebuild, let me know. Like it's a sign though of the tension growing around that team, the pressure, and they just have not taken the steps as an organization that you're hoping to take. And so it makes sense to me that you're making that change. And if you're making that change right now, I mean, Todd McLellan, probably the most experienced coach out there that's, I know he hasn't won a Stanley Cup, but he's coached a lot of winning teams and programs. And, he does have some history in Detroit too, having been there as an assistant coach. So, I guess it's one of those ones where you don't like to see anyone fired on Boxing Day. It must not be too pleasant, but I can't say I was surprised that the Red Wings got there. In fact, I kind of had been on alert for them for 10 days before Christmas too. It just seemed kind of like an inevitability to come. And, it's very short stroke returns here. The Wings lost their first game under McLellan, but they won the next 2. And, maybe some signs of hope. They're just hoping to get the kind of bounce. The Blues have had a bounce under Jim Montgomery since that move. And obviously Detroit's trying to get into a playoff chase. I don't know if they can do it. I don't know if they have the team for it, but this you make that move now because you're still hoping that there's a response there that you can still salvage something from this season.
All right. And with that, for the first time in 2025, it's time for Stick Taps. We show love to somebody in the hockey/sporting world, or you can use the cross-check option if you so wish. But
I am not starting a new year with a cross-check.
That's it. I don't think we're going to use that option so soon. CJ, who is deserving of a Stick Tap this week?
Well, since I am the Latvian flag waver, I'm going to give my stick tap to Elvis Merzlikins, the goaltender for the Columbus Blue Jackets, who's born in Latvia. I thought it was a really cool gesture. One of the things I've liked about the World Juniors broadly is the way it connects NHL players to those teams. I mean, you saw a number of Senators, whether it was Tim Stützle going and speaking to the German team. I saw Linus Ullmark was in with the Swedes. Brady Tkachuk addressed Team USA, and Elvis Merzlikins, who's not even in Ottawa, sees his Latvia beat Canada and arranges for the team to go for dinner on him. And he actually apparently basically FaceTimed in and gave them like a motivational speech. And I I thought, what a cool touch. What a moment for those players, in addition to getting that win, but just to get that reaction. And, I thought it was a nice gesture from Merzlikins. So that's worthy of my stick tap. We should all be trying to spread the best version of ourselves in a new year. And I thought that was a nice gesture from Elvis.
Man, I remember after Latvia played the States, like we were still asking guys about that game. That's a game that they're going to remember for the rest of their lives. It doesn't matter if they don't amount to having any significant pro careers, or they just play in Europe, or they just do whatever with their lives. They can do whatever they want. That is a moment that they could say for the rest of their lives. They beat Canada in Canada. Like, that's something that they're going to hold on to for the rest of their lives. And I don't blame them for being in awe and shock about it. Like, being further away from it, like, that's a really freaking cool moment for them. Good on them. That's awesome.
Exactly. I'm with you. Who do you got?
I'll give it to Patrick Laine. You posted the story a couple days ago of him hooking up the Tappara Finland U15 AAA squad with tickets to the Islanders Leafs game after winning the Wayne Gretzky International Tournament. That's a really nice gesture. I think we should just keep it up in the theme of NHL players being nice, and Patrick Laine supporting the young Finnish team, the young Finnish players. That's a really cool gesture on his part. So I'm willing to start with some love as well. I don't have hate in my heart, CJ. I know sometimes.
No, I know you don't. It's just funny because you went through a run of cross checks late 2024. Maybe you were getting a little stressed or something. You went through a run of cross checks there.
I had a bad cold at the end of the year. I've
been sick for 3 weeks, man. What's going on?
I think we've both been in it. Like, I think we're getting out of it.
I veered out of it, and then I'm back in the last couple days here. Like, what? I don't know what's happening.
I just thought I'd get rid of maybe that's why I was in that mood. But it's 2025. It's a new year. I'm really excited for 2025. I'm excited for that live show we're doing in Cobourg, in your home city, man. Like, dude.
I respect it, but you cannot call it a city because it's not really a city.
Okay. Well, your hometown.
I mean, there are 2 water towers, so I mean, I can see why you get confused that it's a real
dog. I get it, but no, I'm excited.
2 water towers, 2 high schools. I mean, yeah, it's bumping there.
You gotta give us the tour. You gotta give us a tour of your old haunts. Everything that was popping when young CJ was doing his thing.
We don't even need a car for that. We could walk it.
I'll get my steps in. Let's do it.
I guess I'm just saying it's not a lot, but yeah, I'm excited to go back. Spent time there over the holidays, obviously, and guess we're hitting up Boston Pizza and doing a show. I'll be a little nervous. I'll be honest. Doing the live thing. It's a little different vibe than you and I recording this on a Thursday morning, but I'm pumped we're going to get there, and I hope some of our listeners will come out and say hi and meet Cobourg Papa, and we'll talk some hockey.
100%. All the details should be in our bio. We'll be promoting this for the next little while up until the date. So you'll know everything you need to know about that live event. But in the meantime, subscribe to the podcast. We'll be back on Monday. Get your questions in now for Ask CJ, and welcome to 2025. Thanks so much for listening and watching us, and we'll be back soon.
The Chris Johnston Show. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris and follow Julian @JKA McKenzie.
The Chris Johnston Show.